Good morning everybody and welcome back to week 9 of building Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild in Lego, where today I sort of was hoping to do this on camera, but it sort of just came together. So a couple of months back I made a prototype for these sections of wall that would appear in this Hyrule Castle MOC. You may have seen it in an earlier Octane's Oracle as a background build. However, here it is new and settled on the A1 plate. For those of you that weren't here last week or don't quite remember, this was the Technic frame that we built last week. I highly recommend you check out the rest of the series. And we covered it over, and I told you that there was going to be a guard, post, section on top. And, well, I wasn't lying, because here it is, and it's big, and it's complicated, and we are here to take a detailed look at it today. And this is not the only thing. We've done our prison planning. We'll be going back to that later if you guys are here for that as well. But I would recommend that you stick around for this part as well, because this is going to be a design that you see a lot of in the castle. Now, before we get started, of course, this model needs texturing, some heavy texturing. We're going to try some actual techniques for it. And of course, I still need to do the grass out front, which should really bring this plate to life. But in the meantime, I wanted to just appreciate the architecture of this build and all the lengths I went to get the angles right. So the first thing you will notice is that it's curved. We go from a straight to a curve and then back to a straight. However, this does not line up with studs, so because you can very clearly see just the little incy-bincy lip there. So if I hide a couple of pieces, we will reveal the mechanism for this. And obviously, just to get the technique down, I made the walls out of the biggest pieces that I could, like 1x3s and the 1x4s I just hid away. And I'll come back and I'll texture those all with smaller pieces, but that doesn't matter right now. So the thing we actually did to secure this and collapse it in is use Technic axles. So what I did is I got one of these Technic axle rods, which you can see clearly here, and I thread it through a normal brick, which is placed on the floor using this 1x6 Technic brick here, or should I just say normal brick? Actually, no, sorry. This is connected to the wall. So this 2x6 plate here is embedded in the wall in the loose assembly that can freely swing on the hinges and on these tiles here. However, this blue segment here with the jumper plates is actually physically attached to the dark bluish grey base, which means that as I thread the Technic axle through, it technically locks it, and I mean it's a bit weak and whatever, but it does work. It connects it to the floor, and it does so at any point because Technic axles are variable in length. And of course, it's just a normal stud connection at this end, allowing anything we like. This section of wall is by far the most simplest, however, because of obviously it is directly on the studs, it's just built like a normal wall, and the only interesting part is of course this first angle. Working with a double angle is never the easiest thing, and obviously for the outside, the easiest technique by far is to use cheese slopes pointing inwards on their side like this, which of course requires some snot connection and some snot work to make a seamless join that is of course very thin and then stops any collisions as the build gets smaller. On the other side, I've had to use a variety of techniques, the first of which actually is once again cheese slopes pointing inwards, but this time instead of facing into more cheese slopes, they just face into some normal 1x4 bricks. At the bottom here, I actually made great use of this curved piece here, which just gave me a little bit more flexibility in the plate layer, otherwise I would have had to have left a gap there. The modern Lego pieces are definitely helping. However, you'll definitely notice a gap up here, and that is purely because of the floor. Of course, these battlements need to be walkable as they are in game, and actually they are 6 studs wide, which was one of the design parameters I had, because I knew I wanted Link and other guards to be able to stand up here. So all of these segments are actually connected with normal hinge plates, which you can see here, one at the top and one at the bottom, and above that is obviously this plate layer. Now normally it's just 6 by whatever length plates that just cross the gaps, but to minimize floor gaps at the joins, what I did is I made use of various wedge plate techniques. Here we've just used 2 of these wedge plates over here on a layer below of a 6 by 3 inwards one, I believe. And then on the normal side, we just use normal plates and then one of these slopes just to cover up as much of that gap as possible. So it's all about experimentation, really. There's lots of different techniques that go into it. As for the next segment down, once again, we've used cheese slopes down here, and then we've actually used a 1x4 slope on this side, and then actually some normal plates as it got too thin to work with. We've got cheese slopes on this side, as well as a column of just bricks which filled in as much of the gaps as possible. Yeah, it looks a bit ugly, but when we texture this up, it should all blend in, and we can make many more uses of this 1x2 rounded plate as this thing gets textured. And then we've also got a bit of an ugly big gap here. However, this was sort of unavoidable, so I've just done the best job I can. Ignoring the central tower for now, as there's a lot more to talk about in there. We've got this last segment of wall, which is actually trapezoic. So we've got two 1x4 slopes curving outwards. And actually over here, we've made use of a snot technique using a slope brick on its side on some studs to hide as much of the gap as possible. And that is supported by a tile on the other side, which is just an interesting technique to get what I wanted out of this. And once again, cheese slopes prevail as the most common technique for wall preservation. We've also got this section over here at the very end, and this will actually be covered up when we do the rock work. The rock is going to come in just about here. However, I needed to make this like this because this is a file I'm going to save separately from the A1, so that when we do a tower like this in the future, I can just copy paste the wall in wherever we need and adjust the angles and then fiddle with it from there. So this is the segment that caps off the end section of a wall. Like if the wall doesn't go into a cliff or something, then you will find these two big round things, although they're not that big, they're just decorative, and then also some dark bluish grey accenting. So I've just done my best to plug the gaps with various snot techniques like putting tiles on the side. And of course, in the real model, these would actually slide down like that. So they actually came flush because tiles obviously don't have any anti-studs underneath. And then you've just got these balustrade sections which lead us into the tower. So these battlements up here both lead into one of these holes, which I'm aware is too small for a minifigure. However, that is the decisions we made with our scaling for this model, where it's pseudo minifigure scale, so entrances can technically fit minifigures, although some of them are going to be too small to actually do so. And those actually drop down ladders, which you can just about see inside there. And to come down to this entrance on the back. Of course, this is an entrance to this little piddly courtyard. It is there in game, which is the only reason it's here now. And on the outside, this just doesn't exist. These towers are a very, very strange structure, that is for sure. And actually above the door, they've got this really neat ornate workings, which I've replicated here using bar plates, just offset and then multiplied into threes. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is these corner segments. So as a base, they're built on some normal wedge plates you can see in here. There is a 2x2 wedge plate which is supporting most of the build. However, just above that is actually tiled off. Now, why is it tiled off? Well, let me start hiding some pieces and then we can start seeing. So you've got all of these different angled assemblies which are built off of snot bricks over here. But if I hide those, you will see that there is actually a hinge. So the main wall just comes out straight behind here. So just you've got normal wall. And then you've got a snot brick in here which connects to a hinge plate, which then allows me to hinge this at an angle, and then the grill plates, the rails here, fill in all of the possible gaps, and then you've just got some slopes on this side to build it back in. And what this does is it creates this square at an angle shape which allows me to build off of at the next layer. Now, how is the next layer built? Well, that is once again fairly complex. As I start to remove some more pieces, well, it's actually attached on this bracket piece which was attached to the hinge piece. So if I simplify it all, we've got, oh, that's a good angle for you. We've got normal brick studded connection going sideways into a hinge plate which goes into a snot construction. We then have a bracket plate that faces upwards which builds into normal bricks, which once again have some filler cheese slopes on the side to hide gaps, which then fills into this ornate railwork detailing as well as a bipyramidal cone before just ceasing to exist. And that's pretty much the ground floor. There is 4 of those, and they just sort of like accent. They're not really properly connected. They are just little decorative bits that fill gaps and give us the angles we want, while the main build continues to be built upwards. And by being built upwards, we just make use of normal sideways connections. You can see that the tower actually expands a bit here, but apart from that, it does the same on the front. We've got some slope work which comes up to support the balcony balustrade on the underneath. And once again, you've got these nice angled sections, which if I start to hide away, they're built out of different slopes. You can see are built on these columns just found in the inside. And basically what's happening is this whole upper space here, if I hide a couple more pieces, is basically all designed to be wasted space. It's storage space, it's connected space to allow for structure. You can see, of course, we've got these crenellations, which I'm hiding here. And we've actually got these big 6x6 tiles, which are designed to hide the light coming through from different angles so that this looks more solid. So you can actually clearly see through to the tile at multiple points in this gap here. And I've designed this so that this doesn't happen. You've got these obviously built out of slopes and tiles and angled plates, and they're designed to sort of work with the decorative pieces we took a look at before. We've actually got a design secret here. Is you may notice that in order to make the top part work, it had to become an even number of studs. And down below, it was 5 studs across with all the corners and things. So I had to just deceive you at the back. This is actually been knocked off center. This one's still on center at the front, but basically what happened was I had to do an optical illusion to trick you almost into believing that the tower was symmetrical, but the thing is entirely off center, and you would just never know unless you were paying attention. But yeah, the entire thing is shifted off center, and it makes this part look really awkward, but it's around the back, and it's even around the back of the castle, so who's really ever going to look at this part in detail? You've obviously got these crenellations just made out of studs stuck on to Technic pins at the front and on the sides, which then brings us up to the balcony level, which is making great use of these big curved bricks and tiles. You've got a small balcony, or at least suggestion of a balcony, again almost pseudo figure scale, all the way around so that you could hide from the guardian turret that sits here. And then that brings us up to the last section of the tower, which once again hides some big secrets. So if I hide all of these snot plates, you will see that once again the tower is completely hollow, and these snot walls with the X pattern on, which is something that is commonly seen on the Hyrule Castle, is all supported by these snot bricks. And then there's actually this, hold on, let me undo that for us. There's this section at the top, there's this section at the bottom, and then right through the middle to create the crossover point of the X is actually just this layer of tiles being supported on this column of bricks, and that is all that supports this little crossover section. Then that brings us into the final section of this tower, the top part, which underneath the slopes you will see is some very non-complicated techniques. Basically, you've got a normal brick tower, but at the corners you've got these stick-out portions, which just make use of some 45-degree angles and some bar attachments to create the crenellation style thing. You can see the gap here with the bar, which allows these to turn upside down and support this diamond element here. And then if I hide everything up again, you will see that the rest is normal stud connections all the way up to the top, where you've got them tying into the corner pieces here. They're not actually attached there, it is just, well actually they are, they're attached from below, but there's above one to floating, just to finish out the crenellations, which go to these normal black spikes and then these normal up and down crenellations. And that is a whistle-top tour of all the techniques, and it is a mouthful for sure. There is so much going on here and so much that I don't even want to try and explain, but I hope you guys can appreciate it. So in order to keep this video moving, we are going to jump straight over to the planning file. Promise it won't take us long. If you guys want me to look at this in more detail, we will do so when we texture this up, which will be in a future week. But let's jump straight over into the prison planning file. I'm so excited about this one. So we are here in Prison Land on EXTA, which is of course the opposite side of the docks to where we just were. And this is of course part of the spreading out the castle, and we actually saw this file last week, but already you might notice a couple of changes peeking through the door. And most notably of course is the rockwork above here is now all tied in. Again, this may adjust, we'll see how it goes. I'm still concerned about our height. I'm kidding, of course, that is not the most important of the changes. It, of course, in fact, is all of this 4 plates worth of planning that we're going to take a look at today, of course, before I start building. This was important just to lay it out because while my virtual cube maps may help with the exterior and the rockwork, they do not help with the interior, and that is all down to me and trying to squeeze it into the space that I think it needs to fit into. However, before we do that, I'll tease you for a little while longer. I added a barrel, for some guard weapons and some things, as well as did the section of wall on the rest of the other side, and actually added in this brick here, of course, that joins the two plates. So this is what I use to connect the next plates. This will have to change into two separate bricks, but this gives you an idea of what color we're going to be working with. We're going to be doing this in light bluish gray. We may not texture this section. I don't know how I feel about texturing the inside stuff because it might make it look too messy, so we'll just have to see. But basically what we've got here is a large selection of plates, and I'm really not sure why these ones are yellow. I can't remember. This one here I suppose stands out because obviously in Breath of the Wild you go through this entrance, you turn right, and there's a Cryonis puzzle where you have to lift up this gate piece here, and then you go into the prison, or the lockup as it's called. However, about here, on the edge of this plate here, there is like a rubble collapse section of wall. And that would suggest that this tunnel, this guard's entrance as I've been calling it, continues along parallel to behind the prison. And what do you know? If you come round this side here, you come in from the rest of the castle and you see the back of this gate with the chest, there is a rubble blocked off wall about here. So I'm going to make the first pre-calamity assumption that I've made in this series, and this is it. There's a passageway here. That's what I'm saying. So we are actually going to make this guard's passageway behind here. Obviously, you will see that develop over the next couple of weeks. But this is exciting. This is the first pre-calamity change I get to make to the castle, completely reliant on my own assumption. And yeah, look, there's going to be a guard passage here that links them up, and I'm ridiculously excited about that for no good reason. However, onto the actual markings I have made. I mentioned that the black lines are actually metal gates. The pink lines are cell lines, so like where the cells are going to be, and the white lines are just our normal curves to show what kind of where these curvy walls are going to be for the prison cells. So they're just a rough marker, but the pink lines are fixed. So each cell is going to be 7 studs across. We've gone for an uneven number because that is what allows me to fit 4 in. This may change over time because I'm aware that there is a cubby hole here that I haven't fitted in. And of course the blue lines are actually the water streams that run through the lockup with this central aisle which has all of like the controls on which open and close the cells. And I decided that this needed to be a 2 stud wide gap just because that was the only thickness that made sense. This sort of determined the scale of the whole corridor. And then I decided that at any point there should always be 3 studs between the river and the cell. So that's what you can see here with this light bluish grey plate. That is representing, and you will see that at no point apart from here, the white dots are within 3 studs. So that is my guideline to be pretty much exactly 3 studs away from the water with my walls. So the pink lines, they divide the sides of the lockup into equal cell components up until the end when of course this goes into a corridor, and there'll be a treasure chest here. And you can actually see that once again we've got a wall here, but then it opens up into these 3 metal gates. What are these 3 metal gates? Well, if you know Breath of the Wild, you know what's in here. This is going to be the Hinox room. We're going to be working on that alongside the lockup. It's going to be about here. We might have to shift this angle out a bit. We will see what happens. But currently, this top-down graph is going to be incredibly useful in working out where everything's going to go. There is one last feature of the docks which I think is pretty important, and that is going to be here. In actual Breath of the Wild, it would be for this cell here, the second one. However, we're going to do the bit of exposed like lockup cell wall that's exploded. So there's actually a third entrance to the lockup, which is like a prisoner escape entrance where you've got like their walls being blasted out and you've got their cell bars are actually visible from the outside of the cliff. So we're going to be representing that here in Lego. There is going to be a section of exposed rockwork which is going to have a hole in it for prisoners to escape, because I thought, while that is most likely to be post-calamity, if we think about it canon-wise, it sort of just sounds like fun to have, and I would rather enjoy the experience of building that, and it adds a little bit more visual interest to our rockwork, which is definitely in need of. Apart from that, there's not too much else to talk about with this planning. I know it's really, really hard to visualize, but I hope this gives you an idea of the scale 4 base plates, 4 modulars in size for this thing, and the Hinox room down here. And we'll be working hard across this in the next couple of weeks, and I hope you will come back to see it come to fruition. It's looking like it's going to be out the, obviously not in nostalgia, but it might be out the docks as far as like favoritism of just aesthetics go. And I've got some really nice techniques planned to get all the little details. Of course, we're going to have all the gates. I'm not sure they're going to be able to rise up, but I think they might be able to swing open to the side. We're going to have all the little flick switches. We're going to have the soldiers' crests on the walls. We're going to have the little like drains in cells so that you've got some drainage, as well as all of the little windows along the back. And I've got some super interesting techniques that I'm waiting to try out. So I better get to that. So we're going to finish up there for today. 2 big files with lots of work. And just a lot of time talking about techniques with you guys, which is a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see what will happen, and you will get to see that very, very soon. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you thought about our prison. I am really, really excited. And of course, let me know if there are any details you need me to squeeze into this thing. So in the meantime, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.